So our next speaker is Ann Smith from Acadia. She's the scholarly communications librarian there, and she's also the chair of the CAUL-CBUA Open Textbooks Roadmap Working Group. So I forget who had a slide in their slide. It was a slide in one of the slide decks that was referring to the report of the Open Textbook Working Group, the CAUL Open Textbook Working Group. And in that report, well, this is the group that came as a result of a recommendation from that, and the focus of this group is more that let's take it further and let's see what we can do to actually actualize things. So, Anne, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Brilliant. Can you see me?
Nope.
Never mind. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a disembodied voice. I've had one of two issues with my laptop today. I managed to get it functional, so I'm just hoping I don't conk out in the middle. Thank you very much, Cynthia. Before I go any further, I'd like to mention that Jeff Brown, Patricia Doucette, Patrick Gamsby, Cynthia Holt, and Don Moses and myself are all on this iteration of the Open Textbook Working Group. The scope of this working group is to put together a delivery model for open textbooks in the region. What we mean by the delivery model for open textbooks is not just the textbook, but material that supports it as well, so things like quizzes. The secondary focus of the working group is to put together a presentation for suitable venues with the purpose of building champions among faculty and teaching staff. This is in addition to all the great work, of course, that everybody does institutionally. And finally, we're putting together a number of awards or grants to incentivise the development or modification of open textbooks and related materials. The thinking behind that is that, I can see Donald saying the audio's dropping out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, that was an old comment.
Okay. No worries. So our thinking originally was, well, maybe we'll put together an open textbook. Well, we could do that, but I think what we want to do is to continue to work with people who are already doing it, but also to incentivize that development, to get a natural group of people who are interested, rather than artificially saying, hey, let's pick on Psych 101. It's got a lot of students, although I'm sure that might come into it. So as part of that process, we'll be exploring what franchising BC Campus would mean and exploring a business case for this. That, of course, is the model that eCampus Ontario originally started with, although they took it from there. So we've already settled upon Pressbooks as the delivery platform. Originally, we were going to start evaluating different platforms. To be honest, we already know, based upon some of the members' experience, so for example, perhaps Jeff with GitHub, and having talked to people in the region and also taking the opportunity to talk to people at OLA who are working in that area, we have settled upon Pressbooks. As you all know, you've seen the presentations from others. It's robust, it's sustainable, it's relatively easy for authors to use, and there's a pre-existing community out there. So we've already decided upon that platform. What we're really doing is thinking about what we might want to deliver in phase 1, as we're calling it, which is really our first year of delivery. It's almost proof of concept. And then phase 2, what we'd like to be able to do by the end of the 3rd year. As we broke down our requirements for Pressbooks, we broke them down into function. I'll get into this in a minute. Creation of open textbooks, discovery of material, integration and sustainability. And rather than give you a really seriously tedious blow-by-blow account of our list, I've picked some illustrative examples of what we'd like our installation to be able to do, mainly in year 1, in phase 1. So We're looking, obviously, user authentication, landing pages provided for individual institutions with the opportunity for individual branding logos, although, of course, we'd like some CAUL branding there. System to track views, downloads of books, and, very importantly, and this came up earlier, the ability to add a DOI to a chapter or DOI to a book. Long term, we are contemplating, and at the moment we're exploring the idea of, would we mint DOIs or ISBNs regionally or not? Under the creation of open textbooks, we have criteria like we want the system to be able to import, obviously, other textbook formats, make sure it can handle LaTeX and math equations, tables, footnotes, all that might seem really obvious, but not necessarily. And definitely support the application of a license such as Creative Commons. Under discovery, a lot more of the things you'd expect that spring to mind: ability to search within the book, and the platform supports WCAG2 guidelines, and that content can be exported and shared in a variety of formats. Most of the features under our integration category, we decided were really what we call phase 2. Our third year of delivery. So this covers things like integration with the learning management system, integration with other systems such as your IR. And finally, under sustainability, we're including the things that you'd expect, such as user documentation and training material. That's a really important part of it to make the whole thing, I was going to say go much more easily, but go at all, I'd even say. And we want to make sure the framework is extendable and includes local developments. In previous conceptions of the working group, we contemplated the old espresso machine for delivering the print on demand, but times have moved on, and there are various feelings about espresso machines these days, and we're looking at options like Lulu and Rapido as a delivery mechanism for the print components. We'd like our service, now this is phase 2 we feel, to include a default set of covers for our open textbooks. You know, something not too flashy, but something so there's a common look and feel, at least for those institutions or those places who don't want to have to start messing around with a graphic designer or graphic design. If you've got one, wonderful. If you don't, you may be quite happy to see our default set of covers. And you might be wondering, although not so much now because Lise mentioned it, where the groundwork and the evidence came from to support this open textbook working group. And frankly, I'd like to do a quick plug for the previous iteration of this group. Lise waved the report around. There's a wealth of fascinating data, evidence-based information in there. We did base it partly on the Florida survey and a couple of others. And what I'd like to say on the upswing, let's keep it positive, is we had 393 individuals who responded. And what we do know right now at this second, there are a total of 49 courses in the region who have already assigned a part of or an entire open textbook. And that's without any apparent institutional incentivization, with the exception of NSCC, which seems to be running a highly effective and different model. So that's what people are doing off their own bat. So that's where this work is coming from. I could also give you lots of juicy details in the key findings, which are on page 3 of the report. And there's lots of things in there. I mean, I'm not going to go into it because there's so much. I don't really know where to pick, but you know, we know what the top factor is for influencing their decision to create and adapt an open textbook, and that's securing the time to required the work. The most commonly reported license is CC by share alike, yeah? Although the majority of respondents don't actually know if their textbook has a license or what license it does have, if it does have one, which reinforces the presentation of our early of Rajiv, who basically said they're not terribly interested in copyright. There's lots of detail there. There's also in the appendix all the subject areas where we already have open textbooks in this region. So I'm not going to talk about that too much. I'm trying to stick to my time limit a little bit. finally, Donald and somebody else mentioned the incentivization part earlier. Donald and I and Jeff are working on what our incentivization might look like. And right now, it's anything and everything that we're spitballing. So, University of Saskatchewan, for example, I talked to them this week. They absolutely don't provide money for release times for professors. They will incentivize using student work or an instructor, anybody who's on a contract. They will incentivize paying for images. Originally, when they started, they incentivized an actual open textbook or significant modification of a textbook. Now, because they've been doing it for a while, they've moved to, they will incentivize images. They will incentivize the material that supports the open textbook. So there are a number of ways of doing it, and we're going to be looking at things that we can do as a region. And I really, really enjoyed the suggestion of smaller amounts of money to incentivize reviews of open textbooks, as Rajiv suggested earlier. So right now, everything's in play. I'm sorry I don't have anything more concrete to give to you at this stage, but we're right in the middle of it.
Thanks, Anne.